Hey, welcome again to Zombie Tactics. As anybody with more than a couple of hundred subscribers will tell you, although that's not really such a big deal, but you'll get weird messages on your channel after your videos. People will leave weird messages in your comments. They'll write you private messages that, wow, they're special. Well, I get messages too, and I mean real ones, not sort of fake ones that I make up in my head from Chuck Norris or something like that. And they go something like this. They go, some of them, hey man, you just want to let you know, want to clue you in, okay? There are no such thing as zombies, so you should probably relax and, you know, take a chill pill and calm down, because it ain't happening, dude. And then there are sort of the opposite extreme where people kind of write in and it's all the completely opposite. You know, it's like, man, you're the only guy who knows, man, and I know they're coming, dude. It's just a matter of time, and you gotta let people know, man. You gotta let people know. You know, the other extreme, and you kind of wonder, ooh, what's going on with either one of these people? You know, I think I've made it pretty clear in this channel that the zombie terminology is intended as a somewhat humorous metaphor for all kinds of dangerous situations, and I'll just sort of leave it at that. Maybe I'll make some more videos on that just to make it abundantly clear to the to the peanut gallery. But I do get occasional messages that go something like this: man, do you think that it's really possible that there could be a zombie outbreak? I mean, I know there's viruses and bacteria and stuff and radiation, and it does all kinds of weird stuff. Could it really happen? You know, and the world is a weird enough place that it's not entirely a stupid question. So I want to address that today, and I'll tell you what my thinking about it is, and it'll maybe give you a little bit of insight into why I call this the Zombie Tactics channel. You know, not too many years ago, the 1940s, certainly before I was born, but not too much before I was born, they had these movies where they took place in Haiti or Jamaica or something like that, and they were zombie movies, and it usually involved a storyline where a voodoo priest would put a curse on somebody, and they would appear to be dead. They'd bury them, they'd dig them up. Hours or days later, they'd appear to sort of reanimate and come back to life, but they were sort of, you know, like that. And they weren't creatures that were out to kill you or eat your brains or anything like that. But they were sort of like soulless, half-living husks who couldn't do anything except obey simple commands. Now, there's actually some reality to that zombie idea, that idea of what a zombie is, and that's because there is this drug that's used in voodoo, the voodoo religion. I won't go into what the drug is, there's no reason to discuss that, but it puts people into sort of a coma-like state where they appear to be dead, their heart rate goes way down, their breathing goes way down, they actually appear to be, well, deceased. And then they can be buried for several hours or several days, partly because their heart rate is slowed down and their, you know, respiration is slowed down, and partly because usually they're pumping air in there on the side or something like that, the voodoo priest is. And then they can dig them up several days later, and they just keep them on this drug at a lower dosage that kind of puts them in this kind of semi-catatonic, extremely suggestible state where they really don't seem to be themselves, and they're just kind of walking around lifeless, you know, whatever. And then, you know, you get cursed by the voodoo priest, and that's, you know, the curse. Okay, so there's some real zombie stuff going on there, but most of the time that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about like in the George Romero movies. Well, fast forward to the George Romero movies, and when George Romero made The Night of the Living Dead, he was not thinking of zombies at all. As a matter of fact, he hated the fact that later on people referred to his movies as zombie movies, and he sort of eventually came to terms with it. But technically, the creatures in the Night of the Living Dead movies, they are not zombies in the classical sense. They're actually technically revenant ghouls. Revenant is a term that means what remains of a being when all the life is gone from them, and ghouls are mythological creatures that feast on human flesh. So technically, George was making a movie about revenant ghouls who'd come back to life or come back to reanimation or something like that. Now, when his movie went to worldwide distribution, I think he lost control of some of the creative process. And so like in France, the movie came out and it was called something like Le Night of the Zombies or something, you know, with an equally silly French accent. And then people started making sequels of his movies. Some of them actually, I think, even had some of the original stars that, couldn't find work in those movies. And they were called things like, Zombie Horror Party, Happy-Go-Lucky something. That was the version in Japan. And he hated this, but eventually he came to terms with it. And that's how we started calling these reanimated corpses that want to feed on human flesh zombies. Now, fast forward a little bit more, and we get 28 days later, 28, weeks later, where we don't really have zombies. We have people that are infected with a virus that affects their brain and turns them into murderous, homicidal maniacs. Or the remake of George Romero's original movie, The Crazies, where some kind of government plane chemical thing turns people into homicidal maniacs. And that's kind of gotten brought into the whole zombie myth. Now, is there any reality about people coming back from the death and wanting to feast on human flesh, or being affected by viruses and becoming homicidal maniacs? Not really so much. But the thought occurs to me, if it's, say, 5-10 years in the future and there's a complete breakdown of society, or some massive man-made or natural disaster where you're in an area like Katrina and all of society is broken down and there are roving gangs of people who will just attack you and kill you to take what you have, does it really matter that they're not reanimated dead people? Does it really matter that they're not high on or being affected by some virus that's turning them into homicidal maniacs, or some government applied chemical? It probably doesn't matter to you at that point in time. What matters to you is there's a bunch of people, crazy people, chasing you down the street, wanting to do you harm. Similarly, you're asleep in bed some night, somebody breaks into your house, and they are some crazy person, literally crazy, high on PCP or methamphetamines or whatever. Does it matter to you that they're not really a reanimated corpse trying to feast on your flesh? Probably not a whole lot, because in that moment, they're every bit as frightening. Now, these kinds of realities are things that do happen, and for all intents and purposes, I refer to people that are behaving that way, people who are that high on drugs, that crazed with fear or hunger or whatever, that unconcerned with their fellow human beings, that they are willing to act in very inhumane ways and act like animals. For all intents and purposes, to me, they're zombies. Yeah, there's no virus making them act that way. There's no drug making them act that way. They're not reanimated dead. But for all intents and purposes, they are zombies, because they're not acting like nice human beings, and they're trying to do harm to you and yours. And that's a little bit of, I guess, zombie tactics philosophy. Are there zombies? Are there real zombies? Could there be some kind of a situation where you will meet a zombie? I think so, at least in the way that I think about the problem. And you should do your best to make sure that that eventuality doesn't happen, but also prepare for the day that it just might. Not a happy subject on zombie tactics today. We'll try and keep it a little lighter next time. You have a good evening now, and try to get some sleep. Bye-bye.